Elden Ring PVP. You know it, you love it, you hate it, it consumes your very essence. Or you actually don't participate at all, in which case you can just follow along for the sweet sounds of my voice and all the depth I bring to every conversation around the only thing I ostensibly care about. Since Shadow of the Erdtree, the Elden Ring PvP community has been in a perpetual downward spiral. With no structural improvements to the system and patches entirely absent for nearly 6 months at time of writing, everyone who regularly engages with PvP is forced to make this cost-benefit analysis around whether or not they want to continue engaging with a game that doesn't seem to respect them. For reference, I haven't played Elden Ring PvP for more than a month because I simply haven't been feeling it. I'm a busy guy who watches a lot of TV. What do you want from me? But that's a big deal for someone who runs a YouTube channel centered around this game. It means I'm not regularly participating in the thing I'm discussing on a weekly basis. I don't like that, and I don't want to be out of touch, but my lack of motivation has made me ask myself the very question that sparked this video. Is Elden Ring PvP worth your time? Short answer, it depends. Long answer, well, it's no secret Elden Ring went out of its way to dump on so many cherished aspects of Souls multiplayer, from removing covenants along with unique rewards and lore, to shrinking the max player count to a paltry and untenable 4 players. Even the arena, a notable free update that focused entirely on PvP, has failed to revitalize or fully engage the PvP faithful. I'm sure if you're watching this channel, at least some of these issues are made painstakingly aware to you on a regular basis, but if not, or if you enjoy commiseration of a gentle sort, let's break down the details and come to some conclusion to our question. The first hurdle anyone has to appreciate about Elden Ring PvP is the time investment. Making a build takes a long time. There are ways around it. Cheat engine! But for anyone playing within the expected guideline, it can take dozens of hours or more to properly gear and prepare a single character build for PvP. If you want the Darkmoon Greatsword because you're a simp of the noble variety, you need to carry Ranni's purse all the way through the maul that is her questline. By the time you have it, assuming you weren't singularly focusing on that effort, you'll have completed a majority of the game. Of course, you could just have someone drop it for you, but there are many things you can't get that way. Upgrade materials, crafting recipes, spells and incantations, these are things you need to gather for yourself on each and every character that needs them. The optimization required to have a complete build is a huge time sink due to Elden Ring's colossal size as a game. And if you're the sort of person who enjoys MMOs and making PvP-focused builds, 40 or 50 hours may not sound like a lot when compared to the hundreds or thousands of hours some of those games require for marginal but requisite optimizations. The difference is that a lot of games let you engage with PvP to improve your PvP build. With Elden Ring, making a PvP build doesn't involve PvP. At no point in Elden Ring will engaging with PvP help you improve your build, other than by way of practice. The only required aspects are a few invasions to unlock the unlimited Bloody Finger, and reaching each of the Colosseums to unlock their arenas. Everything else you need to do will happen in single player, with most multiplayer options extremely limited, even if you don't value your time. That's weird for a game to do, and I think it's a major barrier to getting into PvP. You need to spend a ton of time not PvPing before you can even start. If you aren't in love with the PvE experience, or if you're even remotely tired of it, it can damage your motivation. And there's a lot of doubling down Elden Ring does to make sure you need to spend more time than you might like building new characters. It has always struck me as one of the more inane and trite restrictions that Elden Ring gives you not only finite upgrade and respec materials, but also a limited number of character slots. Each playthrough of Elden Ring limits you to a certain number of maximum weapon upgrades, with the only way to get more being to enter New Game Plus. The same is true of larval tears used for rebirth to change your stat allocation. To be fair, There are quite a few of these when compared to previous games, but the fact that there's a limit means any player, especially those who most enjoy trying new weapons and changing their stats, can run out of the ability to do so without running through the game again. And limiting each save file to 10 characters may seem inconsequential if you've never made the same build at different level ranges, but it's an arbitrary limitation that forces a conflict where one doesn't need to exist. These are nothing more than pointless limitations that put pressure on players who are trying to get every last sip of enjoyment they can from the game. These are mechanics that punish people for experimenting, with no rhyme or reason as to why. And all of that is just the act of making your build. Planning a build requires understanding invisible metrics with no way to validate if what you're doing is truly optimal on any given day. Because, like all Souls games, Elden Ring uses a matchmaking formula that is player dependent. You determine the levels you can invade, but you cannot control or even see the levels of the players eligible for invasion. You have to guess. There are commonalities, there are trends, but at the end of the day, you're guessing. I guess people going through Stormveil are somewhere between levels 20 and 40 and have +0 to +6 weapons, so I plan my low-level invaders accordingly. That doesn't mean it's true, and my only form of validation is how long it takes me to find matches. What if it's just a slow day for invading? What if my build is perfect for activity on Wednesday, but unusable on Thursday? Elden Ring does not care about those questions and offers no answers other than the obvious. Invasions are a tertiary mechanic. Whenever we talk about PvP in Elden Ring, we're talking about invasions. There are arenas, and we'll get to those, but the bulk of the PvP experience is found in invasions. So the quality of invasions dictates the majority of the PvP experience and people's perceptions of it. As you can probably guess, having a tertiary mechanic as the backbone of your community isn't exactly reassuring. But what makes invasions tertiary? Aren't there whole channels dedicated to the sport? Well, once you've made your builds and have your footing, you can invade as much as you'd like. If you're like me, that's really the only way you engage with the game long term. But you can't control how much activity you find because invading requires another opt-in mechanic: cooperation. And cooperation in Elden Ring is a secondary mechanic. It's something you only do when you are deliberately choosing to not play alone. This is because it requires you to give up player freedoms such as mounted and fast travel and entering or leaving any dungeons or the overworld. You need to craft an item to find summon signs. You need to meet invisible criteria to be in range. You need to coordinate a password for playing with friends, and the whole thing is something of a chore. Elden Ring is not built for cooperation, much in the same way that Night Rain is not built for single player. It's an option, but it is not the primary intended experience. And because cooperation is secondary, that makes invasions tertiary, thereby hurting activity and disincentivizing engagement. So far, that's a lot of points against PvP, and we haven't even gotten to the actual experience of playing it. Surely the gameplay is where this all comes together, and we find our efforts justified. Well, that really is where it depends on what you want from the game. Invading is probably some of the most repetitive gameplay you'll ever experience. You spam the invasion item until you find a match, then enter a world and fight to defeat the host. Rinse and repeat. If you win, you get a reward that is essentially useless while invading, and if you lose, you leave your runes in the spot where you died. By those metrics alone, it sounds incredibly boring and unrewarding. It's the details and nuance of invasions that make them worthwhile. The gameplay itself can be incredibly varied, with no two matches identical, no matter how similar. Every player has their own microcosm of behaviors that change the battle and give you a fresh experience time after time. But this is actually an area where Elden Ring has failed pretty spectacularly because even though every player is unique in their own way, the overall trend of invasions has been funneled down to a comparatively monotonous cycle. Invading at meta levels around 125 to 150, you're likely to be ganked because players available to invade at those levels have often finished the game and are deliberately luring invaders into a 3v1 deathmatch. It's always been an issue with the Souls formula that the post-game experience lends itself to PvP, and one of the most reliable ways to engage with PvP is to lure invaders. This puts an undue burden on invaders, as the advantages given to hosts to accommodate the sudden and unexpected nature of invasions are leveraged against the invaders in a pretty boring way. Ganking used to have a lot more sporting potential in Dark Souls 3 when you had 3v3 matches with invaders able to actually be on the same team, but Elden Ring did away with all that. And I have a whole video on whether or not ganking is justified, so if you're interested in exploring that topic more, go check it out, along with any of my other videos that get more specific on invasion philosophy. Anyway, because ganking can dominate the meta-level play in Elden Ring, meta-level invasions get stale. Even when not getting ganked, you're still getting spell spammed from half the map away while trying to avoid AoE Ashes of War from multiple opponents. You show up, get stomped, or do a ton of extra work to avoid getting stomped, and then you repeat the cycle. This pushes a lot of invaders to the arena or lower levels, depending on their desired experience. Elden Ring PvP isn't balanced, full stop. Some things work much better than others, and while theoretically anything can be made viable, optimal play can narrow into some pretty irritating niches. If you're the type of player who wants the most balanced version of Elden Ring PvP, the arena is probably your best bet. Opponents compete on a mechanically level playing field where preparation and skill make the difference. It's a dedicated PvP mode for anyone who doesn't want to rely on the inconsistencies of invasions, which you'd think would be a clean win for anyone looking for dedicated PvP. But the arena in Elden Ring is pretty bad for a couple major reasons. For one, it also relies on the invisible matchmaking formula despite being a menu-based matchmaker, meaning anyone looking for a match needs to understand the ranges without in-game indicators. Another issue is the fact that you can't see how active matchmaking is within the arena, let alone at the range you can match within. If no one is matching in your invisible range, the only way to know is to wait and see if you get a match. And how you wait is yet another huge obstacle, as you cannot play the game while you're looking for an arena match. You need to wait in the hub until finding one or erroring out. This waiting incentivizes players to seek the fastest, most consistent form of matchmaking with the fewest requirements, leading them to funnel into 1v1 fights. 1v1 requiring the fewest number of players, meaning you can match faster. If all you care about is getting into a fight, that's your best bet. But that can leave the other formats barren, making 2v2 or 3v3 impossible to consistently match. I love 3v3, and the arena is the only place it exists in Elden Ring. But getting a 3v3 match is so rare that I don't bother to look for them anymore, thus continuing the decline of players seeking 3v3. If I do queue for the arena, I choose the option for either 2v2 or 3v3, and obviously 2v2 is always queued first, so it makes me question why it's even an option. They don't let you mix password matches with non-password matches to my knowledge, so it seems like a big misread of the format on the developer's part. On top of all of these matchmaking issues, matches only last either 3 or 5 minutes and have no rewards, and each of the 3 arenas are just flat circles with no verticality, not to mention the lack of play outside of meta level. The arenas in Elden Ring are terrible, and I hate them a lot. The only consistent use I can get out of them is organized group fights, but unless you have the right number of people to play with, it's a lackluster and often futile option. So if the arena doesn't work for many players, that leaves lower level brackets. For my money, low to mid-level PvP is where invasions make the most sense and are at their best. The power balance is easier to work with as an invader, since progressing hosts are less likely to be as prepared, and the damage thresholds play better when you are constantly outnumbered. But, as with all things Elden Ring, there are serious drawbacks. If you want a fully optimized build, you need to play through the game just like anyone else. But when you want to invade at a lower level, you need to be able to beat everything at that level. and it's not just character level, it's weapon level too. If I want to invade at level 10 with +3 weapons, while having access to Rakshasa's armor and Great Katana, I need to get my character through Moog and the DLC up to that point, and defeat Rakshasa without Spirit Ashes. Which I did. It was terrible. I didn't even use summons because my friends are too bad to help me when the downscaling is at all significant, so I just had to play really carefully against an NPC who could one-shot me with Weed Cutter, is immune to status for some reason, and straight up fucking cheats. That's right, Rakshasa cheats and I hate them, and I'm glad they're dead. Fuck you, Rakshasa. But having to play through the game at low level isn't the main drawback. It's just a quirk of playing in the margins. You can always play suboptimally and see what you can get away with. Many of my builds are Limgrave only characters using basic gear options and only a handful of hours to prepare. The bigger issue is low level comes with a lot of build restrictions, as you need levels to use a lot of the gear. Go figure. And as you climb out of the lowest level brackets and into the mid-game, where your build options expand, your margin for error gets smaller. Damage goes up, and opponents get harder to take down. The odds are never fully in your favor, and they only get worse as more options become available. And to be clear, no matter what level you invade at, invading can be difficult. There are ways to make it easier, but the greatest challenge is having consistent fun. Sure, using Scarlet Rot on starting hosts makes for easy kills, but it's not exactly the PvP experience of my dreams. I want a back and forth with my opponents, to be tried and tested, and to know that I did my best to win, or at least have something interesting happen. If I can't have that, then I'll get bored. Which is that much harder to find when you remember that invading is something a huge portion of the player base views as an unnecessary and unwarranted intrusion. People being invaded usually do not want to be, and will do everything in their power to avoid it. Disconnecting is common, and running away is practically guaranteed in any situation where the host feels disadvantaged. Unless a host team is ready and willing to rush the invader, they're unlikely to meaningfully engage. It's entirely on the invader to make the situation entertaining, as it's mainly their time being wasted otherwise. On top of everything else, fog walling is ever present at every level range. With Stakes of Marika and summoning pools conveniently placed, hosts tend to rush through a level and only summon right before entering a boss fight, allowing an invader to waste their time coming in, only to be immediately kicked out. With how prevalent it's become in Elden Ring, it's a maddening experience that can break even the most seasoned veterans. And the fact that rewarding experiences are so few and far between in Elden Ring is possibly the most damaging aspect. Elden Ring PvP is only able to be consistent in the ways it frustrates its participants, otherwise demanding a huge investment for a fleeting payoff. It's no wonder so many have abandoned the format, and there's this omnipresent sense of dread and nihilism in the community, all of which has been exacerbated by Night Rain completely abandoning PvP and build making in favor of a more streamlined style. I'd hazard a guess and say that if you're part of the Souls PvP community, you don't feel good about it and haven't for some time. That exact feeling is what drove me to start this channel and has fueled all of my introspection with Elden Ring. It was nearly a decade ago that Dark Souls 3 took PvP to the next level, and it's been nothing but backsteps since. Being optimistic at this point can feel truly impossible, and I never blame people for dipping out. So what's the upside here? Well, I'd say the upside is that when Elden Ring PvP is good, it's very good. When the stars align, you're in for a unique and exciting time. When you hit a parry on a guy who's been spamming Moonveil, oh, it's so sweet. When you dunk on a gank squad because they don't understand elevators like you do, it's the stuff of dreams. Sure, without 6 players or covenants, the interactions can't reach the same levels of Dark Souls 3, but fundamentally there is joy to be had that you can't get elsewhere. Nothing hits quite like Souls PvP, and it's because of that uniqueness that people stay with it. There's nowhere else to go if what you like about PvP is being able to make your own character and build in an action RPG and fight in lopsided matches against willing and unwilling opponents alike in a PvPvE setting. Invasions haven't been successfully mirrored in another game in a way that truly captures what makes them special, and painfully few even try. Even Elden Ring has depreciated the experience in all the ways I've listed, and with FromSoft abandoning PvP for Night Rain, we're left to speculate on the future. Without a final patch and major overhauls, Elden Ring seems destined to sit as a mostly frustrating and unfulfilling PvP experience that fails to live up to its predecessors. The highs can be high, but the lows might be too low. With a community as niche as Souls PvP, a major release tanking so hard can destroy any optimism. Players will continue to leave for other games, and outside of select community efforts, it will be up to those who cannot go anywhere else to keep the fire going. I know I started this video by asking whether or not Elden Ring PvP is worth your time, but hopefully you can see that it's something you need to decide for yourself. I tend to frame TTRPGs as games where you get out what you put in. If you invest properly, you will be rewarded. Elden Ring PvP is not that sort of experience. You get out a fraction of what you put in, so you need to decide how much your time is worth for what you're getting. A lot of people improve their experience by sharing it with others. Streaming and social media are great ways to make the most of your time. Then again, they can create stress when all you want is an outlet, and their appeal is not universal. There's no guaranteed way to enjoy Elden Ring PvP, and that's hard to accept. You might have a great time often, but you will certainly have a bad time too. It's deeply flawed and so far removed from what the community seems to want that it doesn't feel like a stretch to suspect it of being a psyop to disenfranchise invaders. So is Elden Ring PvP worth your time? Short answer, it depends. Long answer, it's up to you. I know that's not a very fulfilling conclusion, but hopefully I got across that I'm not thrilled with where Elden Ring has left us and what's on the horizon, and I suspect many of you feel the same. I've been seeing a lot of videos by my fellow creators echoing similar vibes, and it really sucks to feel like you're losing something you care about. Gaming is a vital form of personal expression, and when you can't engage with it how you need to, it can affect you on multiple levels. Elden Ring PvP actually depresses me psychologically. It makes me sad to think about. Games shouldn't do that. And Elden Ring PvP is still worth my time, just when I'm in the mood. I need to approach it pragmatically, or it will consume my very essence. In, like, a bad way. I know this was a long one, so if you watched this far, hopefully it was worth your time. If so, leave a comment and tell me how you're coping with the long night that is the wait for a new PvP game. Like the video if you want me to continue making them, dislike it if you think I should take a dirt nap, and subscribe to see how either of those goes. Your engagement genuinely helps me, and I cannot tell you just how much I appreciate it. And remember, games are meant to be enjoyed, and you should enjoy them however you can, even if that sometimes means not playing them. Take care of yourself and each other, and don't succumb to the pit of despair waiting below. Until next time, thank you for watching.